This is the CW Spiral, a podcast run by three survivors of the CW's calling in 2022. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network and the WB, the latest news and in-depth Sporterville discussions of the best and messiest shows to ever grace the small screen. Hey, so very excited to do our Thanksgiving pod, especially because I watched my first ever episode of Gilmore Girls, which I'll be giving you my hot takes. Be prepared. But first, we're going to launch into the news. I know everyone's getting tired of hearing about the pulled shows, but there are more pulled shows to talk about. Everyone Else Burns and Run the Burbs, which did run from 9 to 10 on the CW, have been pulled from the Thursday schedule. There's no word on whether or not they'll be put back at any point. They'd only gotten to air 3 episodes each. Everyone Else Burns literally had just started its run on the CW, while Run the Burbs was in the middle of its season 2. It's not looking great out here, but at this point, I think the CW is just trying to get to 2024.
Mm-hmm. And Everyone Else Burns was renewed, right?
Ahead of the premiere, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah,
right?
when that happens, you're all automatically like, oh, are we taking a risk here? Do we know anything? It's different if it's a show that's proved popular when it's coming back for its second season, it's renewed for a third or something like that. But we had no idea how the show was going to land on the CW. And like, I love seeing the globalization of Channel 4 sitcoms. It's wonderful because I know what Channel 4 sitcoms are like. So I was kind of rooting for the show to do well. But on the same week that Superman and Lois, the network's most watched show, is ending, we renewed Everyone Else Burns before it even aired. And now, what, 2-3 weeks later, it's been pulled after a couple of episodes. I know all those are completely separate situations, but the optics are not good, people.
They're not. I'm not really understanding what's going to happen with it. There's no idea whether it's going to end up on CWTV.com and the CW app to finish their runs or not. Whether this is a killer camp situation where it's not working in the fall, so we're going to try to do it in the summer. I mean, maybe it could work in the summer after the original slate finishes, or I guess keeps running with Superman and Lois season 4 running through the summer, but I don't know. I mean, more power to them. We didn't know whether Run the Burbs season 3 was going to run on the CW anyway. They got renewed in Canada, but that didn't necessarily mean it was going to air on the CW. Everyone Else Burns. I mean, season 2 could come our way. Season 2 might not come our way. Not that we're particularly invested, like as a pod, but it's just weird for the network to continue to keep doing this.
Very weird. And I guess maybe they're sizing it up against the likes of like Family Law, which was doing 5 times the viewership of Everyone Else Burns. So I assume Family Law will be back for its already renewed 3rd season whenever the time comes. I keep bringing that show up because it really turned into like the little show that could. Season 1 did decent numbers, but season 2 did so well for them. So I guess they're just looking, Nexstar CW is just looking for their own version of that. And I get sad, I don't know if Everyone Else Burns is going to be it.
Mm-hmm. No, but thankfully we will be getting the shows that we are actually interested in back come 2024. We did get news when filming is supposed to start. So All American is going to start in December in terms of filming, and All American Homecoming is going to start filming in January. Superman and Lois is the only one that actually has a filming window, and that's January 11th to April 22. Wow, April 22nd. Which, I mean, that does also confirm that we're likely not going to get Superman Lois season 4 at the start of April, like we're supposed to be getting the other shows. That's not surprising. I wonder if they're going to hold it till May or even June, though.
Do you think they'll film it all at once and wait to air it, or do you think they'll start airing it in like March while they're like mid-filming?
I think the old CW would have done that. As someone who's dying to see new episodes of Superman and Lois, I honestly don't care if they hold the whole thing because we do not want a repeat of the show's journey over the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't factor that in.
You know what I mean?
I didn't complete the equation.
But yeah, I do think they will hold it. I mean, because it could be their next big tentpole, since if the reporting does hold, All American Homecoming, and Walker will all debut in April. So they'll need to hold something to really give some oomph to the summer if they wanted to have like a big summer schedule of any kind. Walker is the only one where there wasn't an announcement on when it's supposed to be filming. It was also the only show though that we knew had the writers' room open. We suspected with Superman and Lois and All American Homecoming because of just different writers' cuts, but there was no confirmation. So it's weird that it doesn't have a announced schedule for the start of filming, but it does take place in Austin, Texas. I don't know if they're going to try to hold it until January anyway.
I just, all this conversation, I have to say, CW is starting to feel like CW again, and it might be the last time we can say that. So, yeah, I'm here for it. Bring it on.
Yes, I do want more news. I complained about
Yeah.
this in our company Slack. I just want news that's not sports related and has something to do with the other shows that are supposed to be coming. This is just a
I
plug.
want like a premiere date for what's my show that I was screaming about? What's it called?
Not Sight Unseen. Wild Cards.
Wild Cards. I need it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's what I want.
I mean, I'm sure they could drop the news at some point. Just at least tell us they're filming right now.
Mm.
You know, I guess I have to go stalk CBC.
Get that intel.
Yes. Hey, moving into our Thanksgiving special, though, we're going to kick it off with Gossip Girl, Blair Waldorf Must Pie. I tried watching it during like my scheduled set of work hours for tuning into the things I need to watch for the pod or for hidden remote. I had to pause it because it's not background watching. I was laughing too much. I was like, I need to actually write for work, so let me just wait until I get off work to watch it. And it did not disappoint. I just really, really love this episode.
I love this episode so much, and I know everyone loves the season 3 Thanksgiving. I think it's season 3, the one with the Jason Derulo song, and everyone's like at dinner and it's awkward. I'm sorry, season 1 far superior, and that is, I will fall on that sword, die on that hill, all the things. I think this episode is so good, just like all around.
Yeah. And guys, I really have to be thankful that y'all didn't pick the season 3 one, because I never made it to season 3. I have seen the first 2 seasons, and when you watch something a decade ago, binge it, it all kind of blurs together. This was one of the episodes I really, really remembered, and I don't think in my head I realized it was the Thanksgiving episode. But yeah, wow, full of drama, the perfect kind of holiday themed episode you could have asked for. There's a reason I remembered it after all these years, and like you said, just perfect all around.
Mm-hmm. Although I do want to give a bit of a trigger warning just for anyone who's like never seen the episode. We will be discussing Blair and her bulimia, and we will be discussing Nate Archibald's father's suicide attempt. Sure. Especially because I also have to ask about what exactly was going on with the Dutch banking situation, because I did not remember, and I was very confused.
His dad was doing something sketchy, and I think he realized he couldn't get away with it, maybe. Okay. I don't know. That like subplot was like real subplot. It was like always like the least interesting thing happening, because like when they kept cutting to Nate being sad, I was like, this isn't that interesting. I'm sorry, Nate, love you so much. But it's like the 4th most interesting thing happening in this episode.
True. It's just I was confused. I was like, is it embezzlement? Did we steal from the Dutch? What did we do?
It's like, it's that thing. I feel like this happens a lot in the teen dramas. There's always a dad that kind of was like being sketchy with money and their business, like Marissa's dad in the OC.
That was embezzlement.
Yes, something was happening there. And yeah.
Okay, well, sorry to that man. But the Archibalds are like the Vanderbilts, so it was kind of not funny. I did feel bad for him. And she's like, I can just write you a check. Come sit down at the Thanksgiving table. I was like, oh, ma'am, so dismissive.
Yeah. I do feel really bad for Nate, though, because he's going through that on his own.
And bleak lighting.
Right? He has no siblings. It's just him fighting for his life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's tough.
By himself eating dry turkey.
But I mean, sad. I wish I could tell him, give it a few more seasons, you'll be running a newspaper for no reason.
He was the only one unhappy. I mean, they were all kind of unhappy in different ways, but there was also like the joy and representation of family and community, and then having people there for you. I think, I mean, after coming out of Tarzan, where Leighton Meester was not used basically at all, and watching this episode, and I was like, there's my girl. There she is, running circles around everybody.
In her element, yeah.
Yes. Cooked from beginning to end.
She did. And she was making that, like, I'm sure it was super expensive, but like baby doll dress work too.
Those headbands were
iconic.
Just the best.
I will say, watching the episode though as an adult and remembering that in the flashback they're supposed to be 15, I was like, why is her father think it's funny that Serena's drunk in the house?
Yeah.
Not funny. Like, I
It's
just water her
drawing you.
down. I was like,
It's
please.
one of the that's one of the like, okay, I'll get into it. I know I'm on record saying that I don't like flashbacks, but I think that's just like when that's the consistent storytelling device. That's something that I don't like. I'm very much a fan of a linear plot. Like, just I don't care. Just keep me on the straight and narrow. I don't care what happened in the past. But I think this episode used the device so well to contrast where they were a year ago to how it's different now. And I think that's why I like this episode so much more than season 3. Although I keep saying that, and I really haven't watched the season 3 one that much, so I could be totally off base, but whatever, I'll be biased. This episode, like, there's so much drama and there's so much plot happening, but there's almost always such character work
Mhm.
in this first season. In this episode, it's really from a place of character from each story, especially with Blair. Like, she starts off as the queen bee who's just really mean, and we get to really see the things that she hides from the world, like her relationship with her mother, the way she talks to her and makes her feel, and how she reacts to that, and how she takes it out on herself. It's just a lot, and I think it's just really well done in this episode.
I agree, because the episode had a lot to juggle. Like we just said, there were like 3 or 4 plots, present day plots running at the same time, and then you had this like subplot of like the flashback narrative as well. And the contrast worked really well, and not just because of the blue filter on the flashbacks, but like
I loved it.
So did I. It was really helpful for me. But like it worked really well because like Blur's a good example, because she does have that kind of like, she's like a more sharp Fallon Carrington at the start, just like turning on people for no reason, and you say, actually no, wait, there is a reason behind it. And the contrast between the present day and the past really worked, because you saw what her Thanksgiving last year was like, in that how warm it was, how familial it was, how her mother was like a completely different person. Whereas this year, it was all very prim and proper. We have guests coming for Thanksgiving. You're not getting the food or your dad's pie. You're not getting what you want. And we never even got to know who the other characters at the table were. They were just there. It was very old fashioned, very cold compared to the warmth of the flashbacks. And I thought that contrast worked so well, which is kind of ironic that the flashbacks were tinted in that kind of blue, cold color, because you got far more warmth from them, at least for Blur's storyline, than you did in the present.
Yeah. And Serena, too, to jump back to what you were saying, Sabrina, about her being drunk. I thought Blake was so good in those flashbacks. She was, as difficult as it was to see Serena in that like destructive state where she was a year prior, Blake seemed like she had a lot of fun.
She did.
And it was like slightly funny, but not in, when you like peel back the layer of like, oh, it's funny. It's like, oh, but it's not.
I think there's also a nuance to it that I could get overlooked, just because Blake Lively is so funny in the moment that it is. There's something insidious, right, about a 15-year-old who is so unhappy that she gets drunk on the holidays, and the only one to take care of her really is another 15-year-old, is her best friend. Like, the adults, like, they're kind of laughing it off, or another adult's hiding it. The fact that we're hiding it from her mom, we're like, she did need a bath, but like, even with the scenes being cute and seeing into their world, it's sad.
It is.
That she's, in order to make herself happy during the holidays, she has to get drunk, and that's the only way she's going to be a bubbly person, to keep the bubbly facade that she has. But to see the friendship between Blair and Serena, where they always take care of each other, scathing insults toward one another, but when they meet each other, they are there for each other.
They said some real nasty stuff to each other in this episode, but like at the drop of the hat. I don't think it's aspirational though to speak that way to your best friend and then be like, I need you, and then you're like right there for her. I don't think that's the aspirational part. I don't speak like that to your best friends, everybody. But it is sweet that they can always count on each other, and they know like the world stops no matter what's happening in their
Mhm.
lives.
And that was kind of like a full circle moment as well, because the flashback showed that Blair was there for Serena, but in the present day, Serena was there for Blair. So it's like no matter what, they're always going to be there for each other. And that's why it was kind of pivotal that the whole storyline kind of escalated from their original conflict when they argued in that first scene together. You're like, oh, come on now. Why would you say that? And then suddenly they were uninvited and it just kind of spiraled out of there. But you did see through thick and thin, they'll always have each other's back. I do agree, Reed. Yes, that's probably not the healthiest friendship relationship, but like they're always there for each other nonetheless. And if you take anything away from this episode from both of the past and present arcs, I think it can be that.
For sure. I think also they handled the adults really well too in terms
Mm-hmm.
of their drama and the nuance in it. And that even by like the end of the episode, we understand what Blair's mom is going through. And then we get the triangle too. And the unexpected triangle. Poor Dan just wanted to make sure that Serena got to the Thanksgiving dinner, even invite Lily, who if I remember correctly, he cannot stand, who cannot stand him, to dinner, only to find out his father and Lily had been together when they were younger, which, Reed, didn't you say you wanted the spinoff?
Yes. Yes. Season 2, there's the backdoor pilot prequel. I don't it was it was Rufus and Lily's love story, I think.
Yeah,
Or no, yeah, was it?
I think so.
I think Serena's dad was also supposed to be in it too.
Hmm.
I
But it
don't know.
sounded
It would have
fun
been
and dramatic.
great. Yeah.
Because I mean, it's been 20 years, and we are still walking by bridges talking about the aftermath of that whole situation. I was like, oh, it was that delicious. It was that good and dramatic that we're still talking about it 20 years later.
My God, but the awkwardness of the dinner conversation when Jenny's describing, was it the song lyrics or like the
Yeah,
perfume or something?
Rosewood.
And then everyone's like, oop, that's not mom. Wrong mom.
The slow realization too, and why are you being weird? Well, honey, one thing we
Yeah.
didn't tell you while we were cutting into the turkey is that we know each other.
And the whole I'm such a fool thing. You know the way in TV people whisper and there's someone right beside them, but of course they didn't hear it. I was like, are they having this conversation privately? And they know it cut to the children and they could actually hear what they were saying. And you're at Dan's smart comment. If you're over 30 and acting weird, raise your hand. Like, very clever, very clever. I love it. I think this is when holiday episodes really worked, when there's a drama, and we see this in the Gilmore Girls one, which we'll get to, when there's a drama at the table and it just kind of explodes and it spirals beyond that. I thought that was very, very effective. Because I remember when Dan invited Lily, I was like, I've seen this before, and there's some kind of mess here involving the parents, isn't there? Yeah, that's exactly what I predicted. And wow, did it come out at dinner?
It did.
It did. I enjoyed it so much. I know Rufus chose his wife at the end. Well, are they still married? Are we? What are we? What are they
It's
doing?
really it's confusing because she moved to Hudson, which is out of the city, but a few episodes ago, because I have been like watching season 1 of Gilmore or Gossip Girl. I say watching with air quotes because it's like been on in the background or like on when I take a nap. But there's a few episodes where he calls her and a man picks up and he's like, oh, well, okay. I don't know. The whole Humphrey family dynamic is confusing to me, and I feel like she doesn't last much longer.
Okay, well, she can't possibly because she gave him an ultimatum and he did choose her. And I was like, ma'am, if you're still concerned that he's in love with her 20 years later, and he's clearly giving, I'm still in love with her 20 years later faces toward Lily and to you as he's
Well,
feeling
they
guilty about
did
it.
a few episodes ago when they couldn't find Jenny and Eric's the little Vanderwoods in. I think they thought that Jenny had broken Eric out of the facility where he was staying, and they couldn't track their kids down. So Lily goes to Rufus's loft, and they end up like cooking spaghetti together and having a moment. And I'm like, I know those feelings bubbled up for Rufus, but he's still slightly down bad for the wife. I think it just takes a minute to sever those ties to like realize like, oh, I don't think Allison's her name. I don't think she's as in it as she puts on.
Okay.
I don't think
Oh,
yeah, I don't know.
not
I
her
don't know.
having a
She
dramatic
seems
moment during the episode, but then not really being in it.
that dramatic moment is what I have on the outline, so I'm going to get to it. We haven't talked cinematography in a hot minute, but when I think it's toward the end when it's Rufus and Lily and Allison all like going back and forth. The camera style changes to handheld, and they put so much energy into the scene via the camera. They like cut, and you could tell the cameraman was like right there, just like moving. I have to say, I didn't like the direction in the scene. I did not like that. It changed the
Mm,
visual language of the show, and I don't think the dialogue maintained the energy necessary to keep
Mhm.
mm.
that handheld going. Because I was like, this is not the West Wing. Like there was like halfway into that scene, it like the necessity for the handheld stopped because we're like focused on Allison, and the monologue she's delivering turned a little bit saccharine and not like, I don't know. I think I
Mm.
might be picking it apart too much, but it took me out of the moment when I realized like, what are they doing with the camera?
I love
Yeah.
these moments in our pod though, because
Yeah.
then we get to talk film studies. What were you gonna say, Michael?
I was going to say, do you think it took away from it or just added nothing to it? I probably should have said that in the other order. Do you think it added nothing to it or actually took away from it?
I mean, it's not at the end, it's not that big of a deal, but it's just a choice that I clocked and I was like, huh, it was only successful for like a few seconds,
Mm-hmm.
in my
Mm.
opinion.
I see that. See, I did enjoy it, but I'm replaying it in my mind right now, and I'm trying to remember, did I enjoy it just at the beginning though? Because I was like, oh, because it
Because it
does
really put a
have,
lot of energy into the
it
back.
did.
It's like a ping pong match between the three of them, and then it just like focuses on one of them, and I'm like, we don't need shaky camera for this. Because like it's like the only scene in the episode that has that, which is why it really caught my attention. They really wanted to say something, but I don't know if the full composition of that scene required that.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very ambitious, and I love that they did that. I think it's great, but perhaps we should have punched up the entire scene to fit that energy and to fit
Mm-hmm.
that
So you
moment.
think the slowdown wasn't worth it though? Like when we did just focus on Allison and whatever she had to say, the way we come out of the spiral just doesn't work.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Food for thought. I'll be chewing on this for a while for sure. It's true though, because I think and I know a lot of people just watch and they're not really thinking about the cinematography of the scene or the way in which the camera helps tell the story. But it's a good thing to point out because it is like the lone moment, you're right, where we do get something a little different, a little spicier than what we've been getting. Because it's a lot of medium close-ups and watching
Mm-hmm.
people
Yeah.
walk away in the episode.
I've seen this meme going around where like Serena always has to leave. And it happened in this episode. Middle of dinner, she's like, I have to go. I can't tell you why, but
Yeah.
I'm leaving.
um, Speaking of cinematography, by the way, can I just say how wonderful it was to see like a teen drama that looked kind of expensive that you saw in New York City. It wasn't another city doubling for it. It wasn't Vancouver. We didn't see those typical buildings that you see in all the CW shows these days or of the previous generation. It looked great and it looked expensive. It looked
That
rich.
that last scene is
Yeah,
what
that's the
always
one.
gives me chills of the Humphreys playing football under the Brooklyn Bridge, I want to say. I
Mhm.
know that costed a pretty penny to like close whatever park that is for the day that they filmed there. But that scene in conjunction with that Vanessa Carlton song, Nolita Fairy Tale at the end, is why I love this episode.
Yeah.
Like the montage hits, and that song is like perfectly bittersweet and fits the tone of the show so well.
Mhm.
I just I love it. I love when the music supervisor just snaps and
Yeah.
they did it. I love
They don't do it
it.
on TV enough anymore.
I
No.
also feel like it foreshadows a bit. I feel like the moment, like the precious moment between the Humphreys, while watching it, I was like, I know I've seen the rest of the episodes for the season, so I know it doesn't last. But there's
Yeah.
just something when you're sitting there, if you had never, seen the rest of the season, you're watching, you're like, part of this just feels like because of the song, that it is a fairy tale, and like the dream that they're living in right now, where the family is united, is gonna fizzle out. Beautiful
Temporary.
moment between them. It does feel very temporary. I also felt like it's a nice point of not de-evolution, but like much of the episode is about growth and change, and then for the Humphreys, it's about coming back to what was. And you just feel like if everything is about growth and change, and that family is coming up back to what was, it can't possibly last.
Yeah, they're just playing the charade, trying it back on. It's sad, but it's sweet. It's cute.
Bittersweet.
Hopeful.
Yes. To zero in on ships real quick though. I just feel like, as the person who loves Serena and Nate, I was like, oh, the baiting. Like just the way in which Serena gets a phone call. And you're like, is she going to be the one to go help Nate? Because at the same time, Nate just leaves his house. And then if you were a shipper of them at the time, the disappointment when realizing he's sitting sad in some New York park wearing a suit he doesn't need to be in. Just not like unsure of who to call.
Wearing a suit he doesn't need to be in.
Where is he going?
Oh, so funny. There's a lot of ship work, and you've got a lot on the burners. You've got Blair and Chuck, although Chuck is not in the episode.
He's not. No.
Breath of fresh air. Sorry. We got Serena and Dan. We got Serena and Nate. Blair and Nate. There's like so much happening. Wasn't there? Maybe this was the episode before, but wasn't? I think I'm getting my episodes mixed up. Jenny and Nate had some situation happening. I think this was the episode before.
Oh, probably. I remember I did not going back, flashing back to that. I was like, absolutely not. I'm waiting for Serena and Nate. No, thank you.
They really were like, Nate's not busy. Should we try him with this? And it's like, we did too much with Nate.
Just let him relax. And then of course Dan and Serena, which, spoiler alert, I'm not actually a Dorina person. I don't care for them. It's the whole dream girl situation.
You see, okay, I did say that I like the flashbacks, but the one part that I did not like, because I don't know if it's retcon or not, but when he meets her a year prior in a flashback, I know they knew each other, but like that meet cute moment at the taxi, she doesn't know who he is anyway, but she's also drunk, and I'm like, do we really need to fabricate another meet cute for these two? I hate it's a real pet peeve of mine when shows do that, when I'm like, we've established the beginning of this relationship, we don't need a flashback to some moment that you created to further this narrative. And I know that's a hot take. I apologize to those who need to be apologized to, but I just really I can't stand those kinds of flashbacks.
I never dawned on me when watching it, because again, it's been a long time since I've had the knowledge, but I know I'm with you on that completely. I hate that so much. I'm pretty sure Arrow did it. So many other shows did it, where you see the couple meet for the first time and they don't feel a certain way about each other, but it turns out that like 6 years beforehand, one of them actually met the other one beforehand and developed feelings way back then. And like, if you have to do more to make your story work, it doesn't really line up for me.
But the thing is, it already worked. Like, they've already had so many moments. This is the 9th episode, and I think they've already slept together, I want to say. Like, they've had so many moments that I'm like, I may not be the biggest fan of their relationship, but I'm on board. Like, you got me. You hit all the right notes. Like, I don't need a flashback to a year ago. We understand that Serena didn't know who he was. Like, we got it. We got that he was pining for her. Duh. Like, we got it. I don't know. It's just a pet peeve.
No, I feel you. Bones did it. And it's, I mean, one of the best episodes they'd ever done, truly. Like, but when you think about the context of the rest of the show, finding out that Booth, and I was gonna say spoiler, but y'all, it's been out for a really long time. I'm so
it's
sorry.
12 seasons. I'm not watching it.
If you're listening or watching and you haven't finished Bones, just mute me for a second. So like you find out they actually had been on another case together before. Like their first case, they were kind of into each other, and they had a moment, but
they didn't forgot magically.
Yeah, they had a moment. It just didn't go anywhere. They didn't hop on to the moment. She goes off in like a yellow taxi, and so then when you get to them in the present day, Booth decides that he's going to finally bite the bullet and confess his love, and he reminds her of what almost happened and what they should have done, what he should have done.
But did that happen in the same episode?
Yes, because they were telling their therapist.
I can't handle it when it's like, oh, I need to tell you this information that the audience and myself didn't know until this very moment. I'm like, no.
And they have this beautiful, heartbreaking moment. I think, are they at the Lincoln Memorial? They might, I can't remember. It's somewhere at one of the monuments in DC, and which is so sad because she rejects him because she's scared. And then they go off to, he goes to war, and she goes to go exhibit something. What is she doing? Oh, an excavation. She's going to an excavation, and they promise that they're gonna meet back at this cart and they'll talk about, their feelings. And maybe they can start a relationship. But then he comes back in the opening of season 6 with a girlfriend. Terrible season. Just awful. It was the beginning of the end for me.
And it was only halfway.
I was going to say that.
Have not been back since the end of season 6.
Ooh, that show lived so many lives, apparently.
For no reason. Really could have cut it shorter than that. Sorry. People who love Bones. I love Bones seasons 1 through 5. And that is where I stop.
And sometimes we need to end the show ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that's okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. As for Gossip Girl, though, one last point, and I feel like I'm saying sorry a lot. At this point, I'm not really sorry about. I like the Gossip Girl revival for what it was, but I know that people got tired of everyone arguing. We might have even said at the same time, stop arguing about the new show. That we all know it's not going to touch the original, but it really is not going to touch the original. I felt much happier and fulfilled watching this episode than I watched a single episode of the revival. I think it doesn't take itself as seriously for Gossip Girl, the original, than it does for the revival. The revival, bless them, they had a lot to do and many things to say, but they weren't doing a lot.
It's funny because I feel like the same level of drama was in the revival, but it wasn't handled with the same finesse.
Mm-hmm.
That's me trying to in real time put that play.
Maybe it's just network TV that sometimes the restrictions of network TV holds things back or whatever. But yeah, the original Gossip Girl could definitely go crazy when it wanted to be, but it still felt like there was a semblance of sense in it, a lot of the stuff that happened. Whereas I remember we would talk about how the new one kind of just felt like a lot of the stuff was happening for no reason. It would just spiral out of control from time to time. And I did love the characters so much. Like at the last time I watched the show was less than a year ago, when we were all talking about it the last time. And I'm very familiar with them. However, I'm not familiar with the new or the original Gossip Girl characters for about a decade. And yet, as soon as I started that episode, that awakened all the feelings I had back then. I remember how much I loved those characters. I remember how into the story I was. And it was like, maybe I'll finally start season 3 now. So, the fact that a show can do that a decade later, I don't know whether you can call Gossip Girl a product of its time, but the original, the stars aligned so much for it in a way that I just don't feel like they aligned for the second series as much as I did love the new version of it.
I'll say it a million times. There's something to be said about keeping a television show episode to a tight 42 minutes. Mm-hmm. This episode accomplished so much. Mm-hmm. And I never felt like I was being left behind by the pacing of how much they were accomplishing. Whereas some of these newer shows run longer and it feels like they're doing a lot. And I'm like, are they doing as much as a broadcast show stuff's in an episode? I don't know. Food for thought.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think the answer is no, though. It's just it's a lot of stagnant shots of characters, a fun dialogue that doesn't go anywhere. I really did enjoy the revival for what it was. I tried to treat it as a standalone show, but there were many points within it in which it came off very shallow. And I don't mean shallow in all it cared about was the super rich and the products we were seeing and the beautiful dresses. Shallow in the sense of character and development and storytelling. A lot of times it just felt like we were being shocking to be shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd get this really poignant, beautiful moment between the characters, or a beautifully shot moment in which someone's reacting to something. And then we'd go right back to people talking at each other talk. and that was about it. It was very stylized in a way that I enjoyed, but as far as the storytelling, it hit or missed a lot.
It's wild that how much the original accomplished in 9 episodes, like how well we know these characters and their lives, and I feel like the same really can't be said.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be the penultimate episode of season 1 for the revival.
Yeah. Oh wow. To go back to the broadcast element, I agree. I feel like, you know, the way network TV tends to have running themes in all of its storylines. Now, when I was younger, I didn't get this, but like the Thanksgiving episode, a lot of the characters were going through similar things, just their own versions of it. Every storyline had a theme, and the Thanksgiving theme pulls together. You don't see that an awful lot in streaming TV these days. So in the revival of Gossip Girl, everything was just happening. Maybe the subplots didn't go with the main plot. It was just, a lot of it felt directionless, whereas the restrictions of broadcast television, where everybody has to kind of experience similar journeys and similar storylines, it made the original feel a lot tighter than the new one did.
Mm-hmm. That's the magic of TV.
Yes, It is.
It truly is. Though I will say that the revival's Thanksgiving episode does it.
Yes, it
Very
does.
good episode.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah,
I'll give that to them.
Yeah, great. But watching this episode, I was like, Blake and Leighton truly were the founding mothers of the CW. Like,
yeah.
Mothers were mothering.
All the nostalgia, it really was so great. It made me miss that era of the CW back when it was teen dramas. Not that I didn't love the superhero era. Superhero era is gorgeous. And the Supernatural one was what it was. I'm not talking about Supernatural, the show, by the way, y'all. Don't come for me. I'm talking about the era of witches and vampires.
Yeah.
that we're doing on the show. But moving into Gilmore Girls, this was my first Gilmore Girls episode, and I do want to preface my opinions / hot takes by saying, love that everyone else loves it. Truly do. Everything is not for everybody, and I am part of the everybody that did not enjoy Gilmore Girls.
Let's get into it. Give me reasons.
I think, and it might just be this episode because of the speed that it has to take place in, because they have a lot of stops to make. But it felt like it was very, Woody could be lying here. Now I got to talk to somebody else. Woody could be lying here. And this person, I'm talking to you. And then we're moving on. I felt like it was an exercise in how to stuff a lot of content into sentences that move at a breakneck speed. It's like West Wing, but small town. And I enjoy West Wing, but I also enjoy political dramas.
Yeah, I don't think you would like the rest of the episodes. I feel like, not even jumping off of what you just said, but addressing like largely, I feel like the misconceptions of this show. Again, not addressing what you just said right directly, but I think there are some even fans of the show that take it a bit too seriously. And I'm constantly the one that reminds people, like, this is a comedy. It's an hour-long comedy with drama. And even watching this episode last night, I'm like, this really feels like it's part animated cartoon. Like, it could be a cartoon, but it also feels like theater, like a stage play. Like, that's kind of like some of the sensibilities that are wrapped up in the show. And I'm not doing a direct comparison either way. I'm just saying this episode really gave me those feelings that I've always felt about the tone and the language and the movement of the show. So I feel like a lot of people, even fans, I'm saying, don't fully understand like what this show is. They see like mother-daughter ships, and I'm like, it's so much more though. It's like comedy, and I don't know. Does that make sense, Michael? I know you've watched the show before.
Yeah, 100%. And as someone who did fall dramatically in love with it when I watched it, it's weird looking back on it now, because I always say that I said this exact same thing about Buffy. When I do the rewatch, I never make it this far into it because life happens. But like, it's weird watching it now when it's such a like well-oiled machine by the time it gets to this episode. And watching it back to back with the Gossip Girl Thanksgiving episode is really, really odd. It's an unusual show. But I do like what you said, Reed. It does lean in more into comedy than drama. It is a dramedy, but it tends to lean on the itty part more than the dra of that word. because at the end of the day, I think dialogue's Gilmore Girls' greatest weapon. Not an awful lot happens in some of the episodes, but yet those
They're
episodes
very
are an experience.
standalone.
Exactly. Those episodes are an experience because of the dialogue, because of the most unusual things that happen. Like the Kirk subplot with the cat added
love
nothing to the
Accomplished
storyline.
nothing. There's
Exactly.
really, this episode moves the story forward 0%, really. There's the only things that like happen that are connected to the overall arc of the season is Rory and Jess, and I don't even know if I want to, well, Rory and Yale, that whole
Yeah.
situation at dinner, even though that's less about that and more just like a continuation of Lorelai's like, complicated feelings about her parents. That's a through line through the whole series. So I'm like, they really, like, I've seen this episode so many times and I love it. And last night watching it through a different eye, because we're talking about it, I'm like, this episode accomplishes very little, but I love it.
Yeah.
I think that is interesting though, because like you both know, I am not a comedy girly. I will fresh chuckle at a comedy, really will do that, and I'll fall off immediately. I love my drama. The minute I came alive was when they started fighting at the table. Because that's just like my bread and butter. That's what I enjoy. I think when it comes to like standalones, and you saying and comedies are really like that. You can go through swaths of episodes where there's character development, maybe there's not plot development, or maybe it is really just an exercise in the ways in which we can have different styles of communication be similar, but we're having everyone's like tonal shifts are different. I feel like having watched this episode of Gilmore Girls, that was something I wondered. I was like, do we often talk like this? Is it like is it faster this episode because of just all of everything that Lorelai and Rory have to do? Or is this sort of a thing? I love exercises in different forms of storytelling. I just don't always connect with all of them, but I do think it's intriguing. I do think it's interesting to do the walk and talk when you're not walking talking in a very busy situation. You're walking and talking around town in I keep saying exercise because it is to me. I mean, my studying brain is on. It's like if this were a class and we had to do a paper on Gilmore Girls, I would talk about the means in which dialogue says a lot about a character, especially how much words you can fit into a sentence, and the way in which Lorelai uses humor to deflect, because that was
Yeah.
all throughout the episode.
I think this episode is really emblematic of what the show is like because they do a lot of walk and talks. Lorelai talks really fast. She's stuffing in obscure references. Like the line that always gets me, I don't even know what it means, is when she makes some like Visigoth reference with
It's like,
Suki, and she's like, "What else am I going to use my Visigoth material?" And I'm like, "How do people like this show? Like it's so random and ridiculous, and it just kills me. I don't even know what it means. Like that's just Lorelai to me. Like she's so like there is. It wasn't this episode. I'm also watching Gilmore Girls too, you guys. My TV habits are chaotic, but an episode prior, or no, season 2, Rory and Lorelai are in the kitchen and they make some really obscure reference, and she answers the door and Luke's there and she continues the reference and he's like, huh? And she's like, whatever. And I'm like, the way that Lauren Graham, I really want to know, and I don't know if anybody's ever asked her this. Like, I want to know if she looked up these references because there's no way she understood all of them, but like did she have to like look up these things, and like since Lorelai knows what they mean, did she like go in and like research what is this a goth, like what is that, what is she talking about, so that she can make it believable that Lorelai knows what it, like that's just something that I think is so, it adds another layer to the show because the dialogue is so, they have Gilmoreism pamphlets with the DVDs that explain the references. So I'm like, it just adds. I know a lot of people don't like that style of writing, where there's like a lot of allusions and pop culture references and things like that. People don't like that, but I think it adds to this world and this character that Lorelai really was a student of pop culture when she left her parents' world, and I think it's something that makes her different from them too, because it's like she throws out this random quip at dinner and everyone's like, that's just Lorelai. Like I think it says something about her character too, like that's what she turned to. That's what her knowledge is. She separated herself from her parents in that life, didn't go to college, but she was watching TV. And I love that for her.
And I think that's the thing. That it's very much a character trait with Lorelai because she probably by far has the most dialogue of the whole series, and not just because she's one of the lead characters. Once she starts talking, she doesn't stop. But like, it makes me think I would love to see a script and see what it's like. There's probably very little action lines and just a lot of dialogue.
They're probably thick.
Right, right. But that's the thing with her, and like Lauren Graham does it so well. Because I know this was a very, very comedic episode, but the show also does drama really, really well. Like because Lorelai is such a like humorous character, you almost think in certain ways things don't phase her. Lauren Graham is such an amazing cry face. At the moment Lorelai starts welling up, you're like, oh no, I didn't sign up for this, even though you did sign up for this.
Lauren Graham doesn't need to shed a tear to make me feel what's on her face.
Right,
That
yeah.
woman just slayed me for 6 years on Parenthood, because there's something Lauren
Yeah.
Graham, I say this a lot on this podcast, I'm sorry everybody, but there's this face that Lauren Graham makes where you can just like, it's such a bittersweet like
Yeah.
pre-cry face. And I'm like,
Yes.
don't do it to me, it hurts.
It's like she takes like inhales almost, and you're like, oh god, it's coming. But
it's when she's watching Rory graduate high school,
yeah,
that her not blubbering but her preparing to just the emotion, you can see the pride on her face. Oh my god, it just kills me. This isn't even in the episode we're talking about, and I've really gone off.
you knew with us it would be a Gilmore Girls fest. But yeah, this is the same show that has had me like leaning over the couch laughing, but at the same time like my hands over my face crying. The show is like whatever it does, it's the most unusual blend. I don't know. I like the word used, Sabrina, study, because I do honestly believe the show will be studied for the longest of times. It shouldn't work. Overly huge amounts of dialogue in television can be boring. Very little things happening can be boring. And yet this work of art, this unusual work of art, found the perfect blend. And that certainly makes it an acquired taste. I know Gilmore Girls is all about coffee, but let me use my tea reference. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. It's going to be a very specific person's kind of cup of tea. It's my cup of tea. It's Reed's cup of tea. It's millions of people out there a cup of tea, but I do understand that.
I'm like,
you know,
I can't believe people like the show. I love that they do, but I'm like, it's so specific.
yeah, it's almost like a cult classic almost, and it's not. It's probably the most popular cult classic out there. But like, yeah, to be one of the biggest shows of all time, the most popular shows of all time, and have such cult classic qualities about it, it really says a lot about what kind of unusual beast it is.
I think though, just to stay in class, because this is what like that's where my brain went to with watching and discussing it with you guys, is this. You know how they always, and I know people get annoyed when they hear it in creative writing courses, but you have to know the rules to break the rules. It's very obvious they know the rules because we are moving at a breakneck speed. But the minute Lorelai finds out that Rory applied to other schools besides Harvard, particularly Yale, everything just stops. It gets really awkward really fast. The way that the actors are playing, the even still providing a little bit of humor with the conversation being translated in French for the guest who doesn't understand English. It really works in the way that you take the pressure out of it, is having Lorelai leave, but we still maintain attention because her mother goes to see her, and you already know that's going to be a fraught conversation. I felt like, as someone who doesn't really understand the dynamic between Lorelai and her parents, I was like, you kind of want to hope that they didn't manipulate their grandchild into opening the door to Yale when she hadn't considered Yale. But on the flip side, where Lorelai feels like, well, they pushed you, they manipulated you, and that you wouldn't even know it. I was like, yeah, but children pick up on trauma too, Lorelai. If you've talked often about how you don't want her to be at Yale, how they would force her into Yale, Rory's also going to feel like even if she wanted to go to Yale, she can't tell you that. Because it would feel like a betrayal. And I don't know if that comes up later on. I don't know if she actually does want to go to Yale. I know she does go to Yale.
She does go to Yale. Yeah. Yale, I don't think came up until this season. Maybe Richard just like mentioned it because he went there and he really loved it. But Rory always had her heart set on Harvard. In the previous episode to this one, they go to Yale for some reason, which I don't remember. I should know why. But in that episode, Richard like springs a meeting with one of like the admissions people at Yale on Rory, and Lorelai did not like that. So like this is really in the thick of Yale being a possibility. It's so complex, this dynamic in this particular storyline, how Lorelai feels. And I know a lot of fans are split on the way Lorelai reacts to her family, rejects her family. And this scene is so good because it's like nobody's right, nobody's wrong. It's just a whole mess of family emotions. And I even liked when Lorelai removed herself from the situation. She's kind of just like grappling with this and feeling this because there's somewhere deep down that she's terrified of her parents influencing her daughter the way that she felt and didn't like and removed herself from. Like, she's really scared of that and what that could do. I don't know why. And I think she knows, especially in the scene when she's outside. I think she knows that she's slightly overreacting, but she just needs to feel it because she tells her mom, which I really respect Emily in the scene because she's not looking for a fight. She's just like, Laura, like, come, like, it's not a big, like, I really respected how Emily approached that. Didn't end up maintaining that that tone. But I think in that moment, Lorelai knows, like, she's like, I'm overreacting. This is scary. I just need to feel it. I don't need to talk about it I don't want it to be a thing, even though she made it a thing. So that's why I'm always like on the Lorelai defense squad, because like I feel like I know her and I feel like I know where she's coming from, and I know she's not being a complete, like, I don't want to say drama queen, but I feel like people think she overreacts to her parents because one of the main criticisms lodged against Lorelai is that she complains about having to go to Friday night dinners because her parents are paying for Rory's school. And I'm like, well, you would too. Like, you don't have to like bend over backwards and be thankful. Like, she is grateful to her parents for paying for Rory's school, but it's like something happened, and whether you think it's right or wrong for Lorelai to react that way, she feels weird about her parents in that world, in that house, living in that house and being beholden to their set of rules in their world. Like, there's something there that really affected Lorelai, and however she wants to react to being caught in this cycle of like, oh, Friday night dinners, the strings were attached to that check. Like, it really impacts her. And it's still a constant fear of, because Emily says, I don't know what she says, but Emily says, you don't want Rory to have any piece of us. And that hurts Emily. And Lorelai's like, yeah, you're right. And I know that's wrong. I don't know. It's just so complex. There's no right or wrong. It's just, I don't know. I love those emotionally charged scenes because there's so much to unpack and look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say, of all the things on the show, obviously it's the nice warmth of Stars Hollow is the main appeal of that show, but the complicated relationship between Lorelai and her mom is arguably as rich as everything else that goes on in the show, because the Friday night dinner is an awkward situation that long term brings them closer together, but at the same time it awakens a lot of stuff that Lorelai had buried over time and over her life, and reminds her of a lot of things that the reason she wanted to get away from that world in the first place. And you do see all of that. The show is very much through Lorelai's point of view, but as it goes on, you also understand that while her parents made mistakes, they're also people, and they're trying to find common ground. They spend the whole series struggling on it, but like that was such a rich, complex, and yet authentic representation of that kind of storyline. And it's so unusual, again, in a show as almost caricature-like as this, that it managed to do something with such depth as that. But that's the magic of Gilmore Girls. And it never stops surprising you. It never stops making you think. I also am on the Lorelai defense squad, but at the same time, I love Emily as a character. She is so well-rounded and has so much depth. And Rory is closer to her grandfather, Emily's husband, Richard, but like she has a nice bond with Rory as well. And you can see even in this episode how that kind of draws on Lorelai as well, because she's afraid that Rory will get pulled into that world. That's one of the reasons I dislike some of the later seasons, because they actually do that. And I know every show has to eventually jump down the wormhole they've been trying to avoid the whole time. But like, everybody has their own unique personalities. Some of them get on better than you'd expect. Some of them have years of trauma they're trying to make up for. And I think the Thanksgiving episode was a perfect representation of that, because even though it was hilarious for most of it, some of the drama that came out was some of the best drama that's on the show.
And you're right, Sabrina, it does impact Rory because even in this episode, she's the one telling her mom it's gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's caught in the middle of this generational civil war between her mother and her grandparents, and she's just trying to. I'm also on the Rory defense squad. I know people hate her, and I'm like, girl's just, people are telling her she's a prodigy, she's perfect. I don't think she ever believed that. But when you're being told a certain thing, that's all like people
Mm-hmm.
think she's too privileged and I don't know. I'm like, she was dealt a certain hand, raised by a single mother. She also has issues with her own father that aren't really delved into. Like that relationship is never really, I don't think, explored in a meaningful way. I wish Christopher was in this one.
Mm-hmm.
I love
Yeah,
early Christopher.
me too. It
Um,
was then, but yeah, I agree.
yeah, but it does. You can really tell in this episode too. Rory's like caught between two worlds,
Mm-hmm.
It's
and
sad,
like you
actually.
really, yeah, and you can't like Lorelai. You can't. One thing I will say against Lorelai is you put her in this world. You put her in this private school in Hartford where her parents live. And you can't be too mad at the girl for exploring her options past that. Like you put her in the world, but you can't say it stops here.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're gonna graduate Chilton and you can't. Like, I don't know. It's
It's really
complicated.
complicated. I think it's a tale as old as time
Yeah.
about like the one who doesn't fit into the family, who then has a child that does, and is scared that that child is going to see the brightness of what's offered to them and not see the darkness of being in a situation like that. I feel like to me, Lorelai's weird, delightfully weird, but weird in a way that her parents cannot and refuse to entertain. And growing up that way, it would definitely chafe. And she's raising her daughter to know that you can be weird and awkward and um, be you. That's what I want you to do. And she is being her, but being her also involves being really similar to her grandparents. And that's like a
Mm-hmm.
hard thing to walk. I think as a single mom too, Lorelai would be like, do I deny her opportunities or put her in the same 10 situations that I was in? Like, even am I being careful not to try to mold her the way that my parents tried to mold me? I think it's a very like tight rope to walk. I think she's doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
From the one
Mm-hmm.
episode I've seen, I mean, the cold open is great. They're watching something very obscure and then
Always.
really and then and then realizing that it kind of mirrors their relationship. And then they just start calling each other by the names of the two women that they were discussing in the film. Later on in the episode, I found that to work. I like their mother-daughter relationship. I Gilmore Girls is not for me, but I do understand why people enjoy it. And I do believe that people, if they're not studying it, they will study it. Because you can definitely see through line to how we even got to the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, because it's
Mm-hmm.
the same team. I think marvelous Mrs. Maisel took what they used in Gilmore Girls and spun it up in a way that just pops even more, and that would happen. It's what 15 years later.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't
Mm-hmm.
grown, I mean, what are you doing? So like you can really see that they have grown and are able to do that. To move into ships though.
I've been waiting.
I don't have any. Well, actually, I did like Lane and David. I was like, can I spend more time with them?
Oh,
This
I
is very
love
cute.
Dave.
Like, I said, hi, Adam. Like, I
He
didn't
read the
expect to
whole
see you.
Bible for Lane, and her mom was, I think it was the episode before or something. He was like, I read the whole Bible and I have no idea what you were talking about. And her mom was like, you read the whole Bible? Like, Dave was down bad for Lane. It's so sad he had to go to the OC, but
I know.
we celebrate the OC, but it was sad that he had to leave to go do that.
Well, he's great. I really the absurdity of the way that they're trying to date one another
He's
just
played
really
that guitar
works.
for 5 hours and got $20 in a to-go box of tofu turkey. $20 she paid him.
And the fact that Lane is like, she liked you. I was like, man, it's 5 hours. What does that break
Bare
down
minimum.
into?
Like what, $4 an hour?
Oh,
Is that what
and
math is?
he didn't even get to do anything. I don't know actually. Yes, it is $4 now. I just can't. Why? Her mom also made me laugh. I did enjoy her. She, like in real life, that would be awful, but in this show, it really, really works. As far as Jess and Rory, it's a no for me. It's just I please don't come for me in the comments, but I didn't see the chemistry. Just like, and to be fair, it's like 2 to 3 one-off scenes, very little context.
It's like their first episode as like an official couple too.
Okay, but his attitude wasn't it for me. Like it just
that's Jess.
Okay, because she pulled him away so that they could kiss away from the front window of the grocery store in which her boyfriend works, and he's like, "Well, he's gonna have to get used to it anyway." I was like, "Yeah, but you don't have to shove it in his face, especially when she left him for you. Like, just be kind." What I had told y'all in the chat stays true. And like it truly just belongs on the cover of The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.
He was so cute in that scene though. Like Milo Ventimiglia was so handsome back then. Oh, he still is, but like in that scene, I was like, oh, okay, model.
He's a young leading man. Very true. I was like, Milo, I get it. I do, but I'm not seeing it between their characters. Maybe in another episode.
And Lorelai, that when they're eating dinner at Luke's and Lorelai's just like lame-o kiss, and I'm like, get him.
Like, ma'am. But the scene I could have done without though was between him and Dean. I was like, Jared, if you don't go on somewhere, what is this?
Dean, it was stolen valor. It was misplaced confidence. I'm like, Dean, what are you doing? You're not fooling anybody. Like, what? I know he's trying to egg him on and bait him. It was just exactly what Jess said. Is like, if you throw a punch at me, Rory's gonna, she's gonna blame me, and it's gonna look bad on me. So I'm not gonna buy this. But like Dean, he doesn't act like that. I'm like, where did you get off?
Like, got one conversation from Lorelai who was brave.
I said about the Gossip Girl one and that I remembered almost everything that happened. And this is one of those Gilmore Girls ones. I absolutely remembered everything. Completely forgot that scene happened. That was like, that never happened to me. So when it happened, I was like, where are we going with this? It's getting very dark. Why are we going down an alleyway? What's going to happen here?
He was like, oh, I'm 3 inches taller than you. Like, calm down, sir.
It was like the scene everyone's avoiding because Jess just turns around and he's there in the corner. The paranoid voice in my head was like, if this was any other show, Dean would be in the corner watching them. I didn't actually expect that to happen. I forgot that happened. But like, yeah, the fact that Jared was still in the opening credits from season 3 onwards meant that Dean was still a regular character. And Gilmore Girls does that weird thing where if you're a regular character in the town, all you have to do is interact with the Gilmore Girls for 1 or 2 scenes and you're a series regular.
But it's wild that people like Kirk was a main cast member for the whole series, but like I feel like there are characters that had more screen time and bigger roles than Kirk. I think he didn't deserve to be there, but I'm like, it's so funny who they pick and choose to be
he had very little storyline. Exactly. And that's it, because now the purpose of Dean existing, and I really liked Dean and Rory's relationship early on in season 1. So the fact that he was still there, I understood why he was promoted in season 2. So the fact that he was still there in season 3 when the Jess and Rory thing happened so early into the season, I can't even remember what Dean does for the rest of the season. I know he pops up here and there, but I'm not sure I call that a series regular role, if you know what I mean. Really,
I don't know if he's in the rest of. I know he pops back up in season 4 because he gets married.
Yeah, he has a more pivotal role in season 4, and he's not a series regular in that one. So I don't know. You know what I mean? I really liked the scene between him and Lorelai because.
Sweet.
It felt like sweet. It was fine. It felt very final. Like if he never appeared in the show again, 16-year-old me would have been like, this is weird. Of course they would have bumped into him. But now as someone who understands writing, I would have been like, yeah, well, there was no purpose for him in the show again. That's fine. But like, so they did find purpose for him. And I'm not sure it was the right kind of purpose for him to continue sticking around. And the relationship between him and Lorelai I thought it was very effective in this episode because it also kind of juxtaposed the relationship between Jess and Lorelai, who did not get on.
Him.
Yeah, it did not get on.
That boy.
And you don't really see it in this episode, but there's that awkward, hi, how you doing? When they sit down, they're literally having Thanksgiving dinner together. Your daughter is dating him, and it was so awkward, like, hi, how you doing? And it was as though they never knew each other. They just did not get along.
And then the scene right before like he's going to throw out the trash and Lorelai's in the doorway of Luke's and they like pass each other and she just looks at him and she's like,
Yeah.
Whatever.
Total indifference.
I mean, Milo does play the role really well, though. It's giving a particular thing that is millennials, we know it, right? It's the sort of rough one who's not actually that rough, gives the energy like he comes from a big city but doesn't actually.
It's
Like
the
there's
brooding bad boy. It's the Dylan McKay. It's the
yeah, it's
Logan
the,
Eccles. There's one more I wrote in an article I just wrote, and I can't remember what reference I made.
and just like I get it. Maybe you'd grow on me, but I'm gonna need you to take it down 2 notches. Just be kind to more people than
Yeah.
Rory. Like
Yeah.
that's the other trope too. They're
Yeah,
only
that's I
kind
think
to
that's
the
I think that's what is like the biggest draw, because he's the fan favorite boyfriend, I would say, largely. And I think it's because it's the way he really does love Rory, but he is just like mini Luke, grumpy tornado.
Okay, fine. More power to everyone who enjoys the relationship. There was something else I was going to say about this fight. Oh, I felt like Dean just didn't need to do that. The fact that he said this is my town is it's a town called Stars Hollow, sweetheart. Why do we say that?
But also, Dean in season 1, he had like just moved to Stars Hollow. So I'm like, you've been here for like 4 minutes longer than Jess.
Oh, but that makes it even worse. But you know what? That's on point for teenagers, though.
Yeah.
I've been here for 2.5 hours.
I'm telling you, stolen valor. I'm like, what are you doing, Dean? Love Jared. Can't stand Dean. Sorry.
But at least the teens look like teenagers. I believe them.
Very much so.
Like, I know they're like early 20s, but they did a far better job of convincing me than Gossip Girl did when it came to them being teenagers. I felt it. I was like, yes, these are the teens on television that won't give other real teens a complex.
The funny thing is, though, I did a post about the cast ages a year ago, and I discovered that the actress who plays Lane is closer in age to Melissa McCarthy than she is to Alexis Bledel, and I was like,
amazing.
Yeah, which, by the way, we haven't touched on Melissa McCarthy. Hilarious in this episode.
Yes.
Yeah,
she's just going full Melissa McCarthy.
The way, and I know it was that can you always tell when an actor breaks when she kicks her foot out in her last scene when she's talking about enscotched or ensconced, and then she's like, that one, and they just laugh. I was like, those were the actresses. It was like, that wasn't in the script.
Amazing. And it was nice to see it. I thought that was very in character, Suki, like losing it at the start because she wanted to cook on Thanksgiving because that's her calling, that's her passion. And I mean, as 3 people who love what we do for a living, I can understand that even during a holiday period, you wanted to continue to do it. And Suki is a perfectionist in the kitchen. So it was like she was like a fish out of water watching Jackson do what he did with the food. But you know what? I think that's the reason this episode really works, because like with the Gossip Girl one that had a lot to take on, Lorelai and Rory walked into 4 different types of situations and you were totally in your element in all of them, and yet it wasn't like on any other show. All of these 4 mini plots would have been half-baked, underdeveloped, and yet in Gilmore Girls you just went with it, you bought it, you completely understood that one of them was having a meltdown over the fact that her husband was making the food in a way that she never would, but you also had understood that the old-fashioned parents were inviting Lorelai to a dinner that she would never have been part of, and that there was family drama that would be unearthed. Some of it was really low-stakes drama. We occasionally got high-stakes drama towards the end of the episode, and yet that's just the beauty of Gilmore Girls. It all came together beautifully.
It did make sense. I did enjoy that aspect of it. It really just showed you a taste of all the worlds.
Yeah.
Spectacular. Is there anything else, though?
Maybe. I don't know. I could talk all day about this show.
Okay. Well, let's end it there then. When is this coming out? This is coming out before Thanksgiving. So yeah, if y'all celebrate, I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving day with your families, friends, or found family. We're the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Happy Thanksgiving, y'all.